What do you think, JT, people are missing here? Take the Republican side maybe first. What we're trying to do is obviously educate our viewers on what's going on the inside of the inside and maybe what they'll be seeing next as opposed to reading yesterday's news.
One of the main things they're missing is, the fact that you can't talk about politics right now until you talk about Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And early on, during the debates, he defined the terms and the tenor of these debates by just simply focusing on immigration, ISIS, and national security. He would throw in a few barbs about China here and there and trade, but the debates and the whole agenda has been defined by him early on. And so you've seen that thread throughout every debate and throughout the campaign, and little or no talk about the economy. When Bush and Kasich in one of the debates, or one or two of the debates, talked about the economy, it shifted back to the other issues. And we see where those two are in the polls right now, and we see where Trump is in the polls. So that's the big thing we're missing. I mean, we've got a weakening jobs number last week. We have the corporate America's curtailing spending. There are layoffs out there, and let's see what they do in South Carolina this weekend with the next Republican debate. With all of these things converging right now in the weakening economy, if they don't talk about the economy, something's wrong here.
Yeah, I guess you said they're going to have the debate in Florence, South Carolina on Saturday. Who do you think leads on the economy currently if you look at anything you're looking at?
I actually think the person who's best on the economy right now is Kasich, probably followed by Bush. Both of these guys have records as governors, as successful governors of their states. Kasich continually talks about job creation, economic growth. I mean, that is the core of his message. He doesn't become mired in all this salacious bomb throwing that Trump and these other guys are doing. It's just he's down to the basics, and he really has a plan for economic growth, and he's done it. I worked with him a bit back in the mid-'90s when he was chairman of the Budget Committee on Capitol Hill, and he really does have a great mind for these issues, and it's a shame that we're not talking about them more.
Yeah, well, I predict, that'll be my humble prediction, that it'll be all they talk about potentially on Saturday night. And if they don't do it, they're going to get horrendous ratings and viewer feedback for that. What one very well-connected and big donor said to me about Rubio was, yeah, Keith, he was anti-Janet Yellen. He was on that train, but his donors are telling him to tone that down now because they understand, or they're helping him understand what that might mean for the stock market. Do you think Rubio's that malleable?
I do. I mean, it's all about. And I have no skin in the game with John Kasich. I think he's the least malleable of all of them. I really do. I mean, he's the guy that speaks with the most conviction. And I'm sorry if this sounds like a campaign ad for Kasich for president, but he's the one that's not going to change with the win. I think Rubio really, Rubio, Bush, and now Kasich are struggling for the to win the so-called establishment lane, and I think he's going to do whatever it takes to win that lane. And how do you win that lane? You win it with the mother's milk of politics, which is money.
If let's just say, for argument's sake, that this place in Stamford, Connecticut, Hedgeye, is right on the economy. A lot of people said to me yesterday, well, that would basically spend the end for Hillary, even though people still don't think the probability of the burn rising above where he's at currently is as high as people might think it could be. Isn't that the point, that they blame Obama, and if she's tied to Obama, that they might look for an alternative solution, which is socialism?
I don't think so. I think what they're going to look for is someone who can win in the fall. We'll see a little bit in Nevada. If Bernie surges there, right, and happens to upset her in Nevada, I think panic ensues within the Clinton campaign and National Democrats. And at that point, the National Democrats will start to float a John Kerry, or even reviving the Joe Biden candidacy. I don't believe that Sanders is going to see the doors of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
What are the odds Bernie gives all his contributions to Hillary? Do you think if he tells his supporters to vote for her, will they?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know that he could give his dollars to her. He can encourage his donors to give to her. He could probably transfer a good chunk of that to her at some point. Hillary can buy that list from him, and and then she can solicit those same donors. But I do believe that Bernie supporters will support her at the end of the day. There's almost no doubt in my mind. He's just delivering something she's not doing right now. I mean, she doesn't have a message. She's not speaking with conviction. He's touching on all this angst, that the same angst on the Democratic side of the aisle that Trump is touching on the Republican side of the aisle.
On that front, I mean, I typically don't watch these things for whatever reason. I was watching the Burns acceptance speech in New Hampshire, and I think I'm pretty well aware of Wall Street issues, JT. And I said to myself, I was having a glass of wine and I'm watching this, and I said, this guy has the anti-Wall Street speech down cold. I actually had a hard time disagreeing with that component of his speech. I was like thinking to myself, that is probably the best anti-Wall Street stump speech I've ever heard. But she, on the other hand, doesn't want to touch it with a 35,000-foot pole because she's getting paid by Wall Street. Do you think she has to cave on Wall Street?
I do. At some point she does. I mean, she's already talking about some measures in the last 2 or 3 speeches have been dotted with anti-Wall Street rhetoric. But to your point, you know, we could talk about Rubio another time, but when you get into these debates, you know, one of the things you do is you prepare for weaknesses, right? And so we know that she was weak on the Wall Street issue, yet every debate she gets clobbered on it. She doesn't have an answer for it right now, so she has to capitulate at some point. And you could see little signs of that, and little signs of that in her defeat speech, if you will, on Tuesday night in New Hampshire after getting clobbered by the Burns. So.
He is amped up on this, and he's winning with that. How is he not going to go with, you know, bring the wood, big boy? I mean, he has that going on. And I meet with investors all day long yesterday, and they absolutely agree with that, and they're scared of that actually. So, you know, that's an interesting one, and it'll be interesting to see how it develops.